Hello and welcome to the next video. In this video we're going to learn a lot about unit testing, our API. However, something really interesting is that I won't be your host this time, but instead Mike will be. So way back when I started this series, Mike actually wrote a comment on one of my videos asking me whether I'll be actually covering the testing section of this entire project, because he believes that testing is really important and really helps you understand code better, which I totally agree with. However, I then replied to Mike that I unfortunately don't have a lot of testing experience and that this series is pretty long as is currently with like the current content that I planned to produce, and that simply it would be like too much for me to focus on testing as well, because I'll also like need to brush up on it myself. So then to my surprise he actually suggested that he can go over it and that he can actually help me with a GitHub project and help me like structure the code there. So now we're here and he even produced a video, which I'm honestly like stoked about, and it is a great video. I just finished watching it, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So the reason why I'm rambling right now instead of letting you simply enjoy the video is because right now we are in the phase 2 of this series, and this testing, the testing that Mike did and this video that covers the testing that he did should be placed like as a last video of the phase 1. Fortunately, right now the only video that we have before this one is just like a theoretical video about phase 2, so now is a perfect time to actually watch this and get a better understanding of testing, which I highly suggest. Also, the project structure is kind of different right now with this testing added in, so it's a really great time now to watch this video, because like in the next video when you see me adding new features, you'll see this project structure that is changed, and if you watch this video you'll also gain a better understanding of what's changed and why. Thanks to Mike again, and enjoy the video.
Hey, it's Mike, and in this video I'm gonna be covering the unit testing that I did for the API authentication. You understand that this is not Stefan, and Stefan asked me if I could create this kind of a nice video and cover up the help that I did with the unit testing. So I agreed and decided to record it. So we had two options. First one is gonna be to write the unit testing from scratch, and you can see me type and you can see me explain the things. And I was thinking to myself that this is not a good solution, because you definitely want to see the answered and you want to understand the methodologies, and you want to see the actual code and explain what I did there. So I think this is gonna be a better approach. And if you want us to create a kind of a unit testing in the future, and you can see us writing it maybe for the front end or the back end, the different stuff, you can leave a comment on the video and I will think about it and maybe do a writing of the unit testing. So before we start, let's talk about unit testing and what is basically unit testing. So if you understand the functions, you have like a smallest unit in the program is going to be the function, and we basically want to see that the function that we declare and use. For example, if you remember the previous video, he had a function that called secret. We want to test the function that is really behaving the way that you expect it. So this is why we have unit testing, to alter the code the way we expect it to behave, to run, or to try to modify it with a different behavior and expect it to fail. So unit tests can be green or red, for example, like if it's passed or if it's failed. And also, for example, in the unit testing, we're gonna be covering some failed functionality that we are expecting the function to fall and not continue, and the test itself is going to be green because we expected the function to fall. So after you did a yarn install and you downloaded the master branch, you're going to be seeing right now that the code is really different. So I will try to cover up as much as I can in this video and the thing that I did. So first of all, the section here you can see everything is different. We have the tests right now, and we have the NYC output, and we have the server section here. We have a different style of the folders. So let me cover up what I did. So I basically created the server folder, put everything inside of it, and creating an app export here. And this way we run the script with the index.js right here. I basically imported the application and run it here. Why I exported the application is really important, because this way is going to be easier for us to take the application with its all functionality and put it inside of our test framework, and it's going to be handling all the port setting up, database setting up, models requirements, and etc. So this is really good. Also, for example, we have the section here when I put the process environment into the test, and you can see if we are in a test mode, it's going to be using the test database, and if we are other than stuff than the test, it's going to be using the API original database. We have the section here for the express. We initialize it. If we are in the test mode, we don't want Morgan to comment and console log us different stuff. So this is why I put Morgan on only for the production or development. And this is the basic stuff. I changed the scripts a bit. I added a test report and NYC and also test report. So I will cover up the test and NYC. You can see what it's doing, and it's really pretty simple. I'm using across the environment a variable here. This is really important because I want people that has a Windows and a Mac to have the same functionality. So this is why I'm doing this kind of a extension here. You can do yarn install cross env. And also I'm setting up the node environment variable here to the test, passing a mocha, executing mocha with a 5-second timeout, and telling mocha to watch and run on every file that is inside of our test server and ends with the test.js. So this is really important because we want mocha to run all the files that are necessary for us that is going to be in the test. We don't want mocha to run files, for example, that are original JS, because there is no functionality to test there. Here I created a report as well function. It's basically taking the cross environment test and it's passing it to NYC. NYC is basically Istanbul upgraded. If you understand in Node a bit, you know that we want to have like a coverage report, and it's really good idea to include it. And NYC, it's the reporter generator that's going to be helping us to see if we have different kind of reports problem, if we have different stuff that's going to be created for us. So this is pretty good. Section here, this is the reporter. I use the alcove. You can use HTML, you can use any one that you like, so this is pretty good. And we have the section here for NYC. This is basically the same stuff or the same thing that reporter is doing. However, it's telling the mocha and NYC to output the mocha result in a nice form on the terminal. Also, this is the package dependencies that I used here. You can cover them up. We have chai, we have chai HTTP, faker, mocha, nodemon, NYC, rewire. I will cover all of them. And this is the setup for the NYC. You can have the NYCRC, but I think it's easier for us to set up everything on the package.json. I exclude all the test files, so I don't want the report to cover them. And I exclude the node modules. They excluded by default, so I added this file here as well. I removed the caching, and I removed the report most of the time used to generate into the coverage folder. So I tell it here to generate the report into the side of the .tests / report. So let's go and run these two functions. This is the first one, this is the test. You can see this is the output of the test, and this is like easy to read if you think about it, if you understand the code that we write. So this is the user controller, this is a secret function, and I tell to myself user controller secret should return resource when it's called. For example, this is the console log that we see here, and you can see like the same thing what you're doing next. User controller sign in should return token when sign in called. So this is like a stuff that I test the functionality of the file. Also, for example, if I do yarn NYC, you can see it's going to be generating us the same report, the same test, everything is the same, and it's going to be generating a nice table of the content that I created, like of the functionality that I tested. You can see here we are testing the configuration, testing the controllers, testing the helpers, and etc. So this is pretty fun and pretty nice. And if I go and type yarn report, it will generate the report, and we can access it in the end via HTML, like the browser. We can say like open the folder, and we go inside of the report, and it's pretty much that simple. So let me pull the navigation section here. You can see here, this is the controller, 100% tested, 18 statements, 4 functions. You can see we're testing like 10 statements in the helper, and then we have tests for 2 functions, 100% line covered, and it's really nice experience for us. Also, for example, the how much branches that we tested, you can see, for example, we have like only 75%. If we go inside of the helpers, and this is the route, you can see we did not pass the section here. If required value is not there, assign an empty object to the required value. So this is the functionality that we did not hit, because that request that value always had a value inside of it. Okay, so let's continue. Let me go back to the code. Let me explain what we did here inside of this functionality. So we have the code. Let me close this one. This is basically the basic stuff, and we have the tests, we have the server, 2 folders. One is for the controllers, one is for the routes. I will start with the routes. I think this is the simplest one to test, and it's with not too much complexity. So it's basically a way that we are trying to do the same test that you did previous video with Stefan with Postman. I do it with the unit test. So I create a chai. So basically this is the assertion library, and then I use HTTP chai. So this is an option for me to send request and response to the server. I can use request as well. It's nice library, but I prefer chai. Faker is going to be the library that is going to be helping us to spin fake data all the time. Mongoose is the Mongoose library that we are using in our server. I extract expect from chai. This is the expectation assertion. You can do as well of assert, and you can do should. So this is pretty nice. I like expect, and it's really easy to understand. We import into this file the server, the application. And we tell chai to use the chai HTTP. We create a token object or variable here at the top, and each time we're gonna be putting stuff inside of it depending on the test. So this is the test suite for the route, user route. This is the main functionality of the test. I create like different constant like sign up, sign in, secret, and user, and pre-save. It's easy for me because I can take the functionality of this route, and instead of putting the route each time in the post, it's easier for me to put the variable itself, and I can use the autocomplete. We have the user section here. This is the email. I use a faker to generate fake email address, a password, fake password address. Here I generate some user that's going to be pre-saved in the database, Mr. Some Test. I would like to have a user because I would like to functionality to fail when we try to submit to the database when we have the user already existing with an email address. So before the test is going to be starting, I'm going to be using this kind of a before. Before I'm providing it a callback, and I tell chai you should do request.server post sign up send pre-save. This is the user that's going to be saving, and if we have error, console log the error, but we don't have, and we are going to be doing the response, and I expect response status to be 200, and I expect the token to be the token that we got from the function when we sign in a user, and I invoke the callback done to tell that before that we finished. So now we have the token here, and now we can create a test running with the application. So this is the after function. After the function is finished, I connect to the Mongoose, and I want to drop the database. you can see here, this is the connection to the test database, and then I do mongoose connection.close, and I close it up. So the dropping is really important because we want to clean the database from different stuff that are inside of the testing, and we want to have a clean database each time that we're going to be running the tests. So this is the functionality for the test, and I describe a test with a describe function, and it takes a string and takes a function that to run, and then inside of this function I do like an it. It's basically again a string of the test and then a function that I provided with the done, and after the chai is finished doing, it will invoke the done. So this is really important for us for asynchronous testing. Without it, it's gonna be failing a lot. And for example, if I not invoke the done in the end, it can throw exception, it can run late, it can go to different tests, and the functionality of our test will not be the same. So this is really important that the done should be invoked always. And you provide to this function the done section. It's basically the same here like this. You write a done and you provide it with the done object. So I create here child request to the server. I post the sign up. If you go into the URL, this is the URL that we are using for the sign up section. And after I done with it, I provide the user. This is the new user that is going to be generated for us. And I expect the status to be 200. I expect the body not to be empty because we're going to be getting back the user with a token. And I expect the body to have property token because it's really important for us to get the token back because we're going to be using it to authenticate different routes from the user. Also, for example, here should return 403 if the email is not found. Again, providing callback, a done, and then we have like server, sign up, a pre-save, and then it's gonna be creating us 403 because we have the user saved, if you remember the test before, the setup, and then I'm testing that, hey, if I want to create another user with the same email address, it should return us 403. This is the error that we created in the server. If you go here and if you go into the server and the controllers, users, and then we have the 403 section. So we have the section and then we have the message. I expect the message to be like error, email is already in use, and this is the testing for the creating a user with the same email address. Now I created describe for the secret and I do like should return 401 because I'm not providing a token and it's gonna be not allowing us to have anything inside of it, and it's gonna be throwing an error 401 because the authorization header did not pass. And I expect now to have the 200. I provide the server with the secret. This is the route that we are sending information to, and then I put an authorization header and pass the token inside of it. This is the same thing that we do with the postman. After we send the request, we put the token into authorization headers, and our application can extract it from there. So I expect it to be 200, and I expect the resource to equal to resource, like the secret and the resource. So this is the test for the route of the secret, like with the get. This is the sign-in section. It's a bit more complex, but it's again easy to understand, same functionality, same everything. I'm basically doing the unit testing, writing them instead of going to Postman and do the tests there, because this is the functionality for Postman. This is the same functionality. We create a user, we send it to the server, we sign in, we send the user, we expect it to equal to 400 because we are sending an empty object. Now we are creating a user that is going to be pre-saved, and we are trying to sign in, and the user is already in the database, and we get 200, and we have the body and it's not empty, and then we have a token inside of the body, as well as the, I'm not sure, but I think the user is always returned to us as well. So the most important thing is the token here. So this is what I did. And you can see the testing of the route. It's basically the same thing that testing with Postman, but you write it one time and you can rewrite it all the times. And you are not forced to go into GUI and create the tests. So the more complex test was the controllers, because this one is gonna be the functionality for the tests, and we don't want to fake stuff. We want to fake a different functionality. We want to create behaviors for the controllers. We want to hit every pass that we can inside of the controller, and this is why this test may be a bit more complex. So let's begin. So we have the chai, we have the faker stuff, and we have sinon. It's a mocking library that allows us to create mocks, spies, and it's a really good one because we can stub a function, we replace the functionality of the function that we want to stub, we can spy on a function to see if it was called, we can go inside of the controller section here, for example, and see if all this information were hit. So this is really important for us to test. We're going to be requiring the user model, and we're going to be requiring the user controller, and we are doing it with the rewire section here. It basically allows us to take the functionality of these two objects that we are importing and set and alter the behavior. So this is really nice. I definitely think that rewire helps us a lot when regards to mocking and setting different functionalities on the object that we are requiring. So you can see it different so you can see it in the future. I'm gonna be using here chai sinon, and then I'm gonna be using here a sandbox to store a variable to store our sandbox. Basically, sinon requires us to stub and mock different functionalities, and it's gonna be easier for us to each time, instead of like releasing the function that we stubbed, to tell sinon, hey, boom, kill this variable or reset and create a new sandbox. And this way we can have a test for each and every scenarios in our application. So let's go with the testing. We are testing for the user controller. This is the main suite, and then we are going to be doing here require, and this is the object. I do fake a random number, I create a value, I create a body, email and password, basic stuff. So this is the user that we are sending inside of the require object. And then we have the response. We have two functions on it, a JSON, and basically is a function that returns this, and a function of a status that returns this. These two functionalities, we don't care what they do, we just need them in order to have this right direction. And we are returning this because we want to chain them into the section. We want to, for example, do, like if I'm gonna be do JSON, or I expect this res.json of 200, and then status. So it's easiest for us to chain the functionality if we return the this object. And this is why I not do them in the arrow function, because I need the this of this function that is created. So I need the context. Before each, I create a sandbox. The variable I create a sandbox with sinon. This is the function on sinon.sandbox.create, and after each I destroy the sandbox. This is really important because we want to alter the functionality and we want to destroy the functionality. So this is why I do before and after. And inside of it, I create a test for the secret. So I do like this. If you go in the user controller, secret should return resource when it's called. And now I'm gonna be altering the functionality of the secret object. I'm gonna creating a sandbox.spy. I'm gonna spy on the console method, on the console object, on a method that is gonna be called log. And I'm gonna be spying on the res and the JSON that we have here. I want to see if this JSON that I'm gonna be passing inside of this function is the same of what I expect it to be. So I return, because we are returning a promise, and it's easier for us to return this way. This way we don't need to have the done callback. We are basically returning the promise, and we see how the application is behaving. And then we have the then section, or we can do like a wait and then check for different stuff. So I like to have it this way, and then use the then and not use the async await for the tests. But it can be done with the async await as well if you want to. So I create a secret, I invoke the function with the request and response, and then I wait for the reply. I expect console log to have been called because we have hit this secret. I expect response.json to have been called with the object, and it's to be okay. This is like the same stuff that is gonna be passing, and I expect the response JSON to have been called with the same stuff. So this one and this one is the same functionality. You can write it the way you want. You can see you can have the two have been, or you can have the two be okay. So this is two functionalities that you are trying to mimic. Two flavors. One of them is maybe more for you. Another one is maybe less. You can choose one of them however you like. Here we're going to be testing the sign-in section. We're creating two spies. And then we are testing for 200 because we're going to be using the JW token in the HTTP section. So this one is only for the fake. So I create a user controller, sign in with the request and response. I then do it then. Expect status to be 200 and expect the JSON function to be called only one time. So this is a nice call count. It's basically a property that has on the spies. So you can, when you spy on object, you take the function and you spy on it, and you can have like a specific variable that is going to be associated with the call count. And I equal it to one time. So I expect this function to be only run once. If I put 2, the test will fail. Let's see what else. We have the section here for should return fake token using rewire. So this is why I put this comment here inside of it. Because when we want to have the functionality tested with the fake token, we need to alter it. We need to mimic it. We need to take it and make it do different stuff. So this is why I created like spy and two functionalities here. I create sign-in token. This is the fake token that I'm going to be creating. So I create a user control.set on this property that we are required here with the rewire. If you remember, what is this? Let me find it. This is the sign-in token. So this is a property that we can have from the required, and then I tell it that, hey, user controller, you have a method that is going to be used for signing tokens. I want you to alter it, and instead of it, use return as a user with a fake token. And this is why it's really important us to have this kind of faking libraries, so we can take different paths on the specific functionality of different objects. So I definitely think that user and token, it's going to be really hard for you to test if you don't know how to mock. So this is why rewire helps us, and this is how you mock different functionalities of the required objects. So we expect result to equal with the fake token. So expect response JSON to have been called with token, fake token, and we are invoking the sign token. So this is really nice. This is like the section here and the section here. This is really good. Let's continue. We have the sign up section. It is the same stuff that we did with chai. We should return 403 if we have the user already in the database, and we create a response JSON, response user, and then we are stubbing the functionality of the user. We are required it here, and then we are stubbing the functionality, and we return promise resolved with ID of random faker, and then I try to sign in. Like if I sign up with the request response, then I expect status to be 403 because we have the same user inside of the application, and I expect JSON body to have been called with error. Hey, we have this email address. So this is how I fake the database, not really creating a user, but creating this kind of a fake functionality of the user object. And here we are going to be creating this kind of the same functionality, but we want to be finding the 200. So we are stubbing the user, find one, returns promise, resolve false. If we found one, we did not found one, then we are gonna be doing this kind of spying on the prototype. As you know, when you do user.new, you go into the user model, And then if I'm remembering right, I think it's going to be in the controller, and then we have the new user, and the new user is basically creating us a new constructor function. And inside of this function right now we have different methods on the prototype, like the save. So this is why I do a user.prototype and I spy on the save. And I alter the save functionality to return a promise. This is like me mocking that, hey, it's okay, we did not find a user, and hey, we saved it, and this is his ID number, and then I try to see if we have the functionality right now the way that we expect it. We have 200, and then this function to be called once. And this is how I mimic creation of the users. Same thing, we have the it should return 200 if the user is not in database, and then I pass a callback section here. This is the functionality of the callback. This is the example that I write here a comment you can see done with the callback. You basically pass it inside of the then section, and then after you pass it into the then section, you can expect that the result status and result JSON to equal what you want them to equal. So this is a nice functionality as well. If you really like the code with the done, you can do it this way. I'm more favor of the returning and then doing my expectation inside of this function. And here, this is the final test. We're creating a should return effect token if res.json. I'm spying again on here and here, finding a user, resolving false, and then I return a user, and then I do mocking with the rewire, setting the token and passing the user, and then giving back fake token number 2, and I expect the function, the suit, to be returned with the token here. So this is more or less functionality that you expect from an application, and I think this way it's a bit harder than to test the functionality with this way. It's also a bit more complex because you need to understand how you need to stop and how you need to set up the test as well. But you can see it's pretty easy once you do it right one time. You create a suit, you create before and each, you create an object that you want to spy on them, you create different kind of requests that you want to have, and you create a sandbox that's really important for Chai. You set up all the functionality for each and every file and object that you have in your controller, and then you start writing your test. Lots of them is basically failing. You fail a lot, and it's really good because when you fail, you understand your code more, you understand how it should behave, you understand what kind of scenarios you need to test, and what kind of functionality you need to go inside of it. And I encourage you to really do unit testing, like fail and then pass, fail and pass, like green, red, and refactor. So this is the functionality. If we go, for example, into the section here and we go to the index, you can see it's easy for you to go to the configuration, and you go in here, you see it's passed, one time it was gold, and it's really nice. So let's continue with the test. I think we basically almost finished with the functionalities. We need to do some kind of testing for the catching with the errors. If you want to, we can do some kind of functionality tests with the helpers. The server function, we cannot test it because we have like different ifs variables that are dependent on the environment variable, and it's going to be really hard for us to alter it, and we don't want to alter it. So good amount of coverage, I think, for the project is going to be 90%. If you can do more, it's really good, but you should try to be happy when you have like 90%, 85%, or you can tell Mocha, for example, or you can tell New York NYC to not test the application, and this way it will ignore, and you can have less files to test. For example, the same thing that we can do, we can ignore the file with the helpers, like this one, if you don't want to test it. Or we can do on configuration, we can go into index.js and we can ignore it. So this is really important for you to understand. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to put them in the video description. I will try to answer as much as I can, and if you have any questions, again, feel free. So I encourage you to at least watch the video 2 times and understand how the unit testing is done. If you have passion to do unit testing, or if you want to experience of doing unit testing, you can take the branches that we have here and check out the 8 branches and then create a unit testing suite based on my video and understand how everything is behaved and everything is set up. And this way is going to be helping you to understand better the code and understand better the functionalities of what you're writing and what you are testing. Okay, so thank you very much, and I wish you all best of luck.